Today, we're going to continue what we worked on last week. So we started a story called The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin. So we have been reading a few of these Beatrix Potter stories. Beatrix Potter is an author from a long time ago, almost 100 years ago. And she wrote a lot, I think 27 books, and all of them are these fun stories about cute little animals. So we read the story of Peter Rabbit, and we read the story about his cousin, Benjamin Bunny, and now we're working on a different character that she wrote about called Squirrel Nutkin. And so let's get straight into it. The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin. Now, we started this last time, and we can review what we've read already, and then we can read a little bit more and learn some words and phrases. And like we said before, some of this is a little bit old-fashioned, but that's okay. We want to learn lots of words and be able to read anything. And so if some of the words are old-fashioned, I will tell you what we would say now. What's some modern English? Okay? So, The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin. This is a tale about a tale that belonged to a little red squirrel, and his name was Nutkin. He had a brother called Twinkleberry and a great many cousins. They lived in a wood at the edge of a lake. In the middle of the lake, there is an island covered with trees and nut bushes, and amongst those trees stands a hollow oak tree, which is the house of an owl who is called Old Brown. One autumn, when the nuts were ripe, and the leaves on the hazel bushes were golden and green, Nutkin and Twinkleberry and all the other little squirrels came out of the wood and down to the edge of the lake. They made little rafts out of twigs, and they paddled away over the water to Owl Island to gather nuts. Each squirrel had a little sack and a large oar, and spread out his tail for a sail. So, pretty cool image. So the squirrels make these little rafts, which are kind of like boats, but very simple boats. They're flat things made of wood. Wood that's tied together. They use an oar to paddle themselves, to push the raft across the water, and they use their tails as sails. So the wind blows their tails, they move across the water. And so they're going on an adventure to see the owl, Old Brown. So from here, we haven't met Old Brown yet, but we're going to see what happens on Owl Island. So, here we go. They also took with them an offering of 3 fat mice as a present for Old Brown, and put them down upon his doorstep. Then, Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels each made a low bow and said politely, "Old Mr. Brown, will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island?" So, let's take a look at this section piece by piece and practice some of the words. So they also took with them an offering of 3 fat mice as a present for Old Brown. That's the first section. First up is this word offering. They took with them an offering. Well, we have the word an, A-N, and so that tells us an offering is a thing. It's a noun, right? So offer, you might know the word offer, but here offering is not a verb, it's not an action, it's a noun, because words with ing can be nouns, and if we see the word un, we know it has to be a thing, it has to be a noun. So what is an offering? Well, you can think of it. Offer is like to give something, right? I offer you some snacks. I offer you a drink. So what is an offering? An offering just means something that someone offers. So the thing that they want to give to the owl. That's a important nuance. What is the difference between give and offer? Give just means you take something and put it in their hands. You give it to them. But to offer is like give, but there's kind of like ask in there. You're asking if someone wants something. Does that make sense? It's not exactly give, it's, hey, would you like this thing? Okay? So offer the verb, but offering is the thing that they are offering, the thing that they offer. So they took with them an offering of 3 fat mice as a present for Old Brown. So they brought 3 fat mice. You can see them in the picture. Oh, poor little mice. And they are offering them to the owl. They want to give it to him to let him eat a snack. Why do they want to give them mice? Well, the squirrels give the owl mice so the owl won't eat the squirrels, right? You can eat this, just don't eat us, please. So they brought 3 fat mice as an offering, or an offering as a present, and put them down upon his doorstep. So doorstep here has a hyphen, but in American English now, we just write it as doorstep with no space, no hyphen. Can you see that? Nope, that's off the page. How about here? Yeah, no hyphen needed. And the doorstep just means the end of the door, like where it's the there's a door, under the door there's the thing you have to step over, and so that's the doorstep. Tianpei says, oh, poor mice, oh no. Well, so far we have a story about a rabbit, and we have a story about a squirrel. Oh geez, we did have a story about mice. The Tailor of Gloucester. I hope this isn't those mice. Oh no. And thanks for joining, Tianpei. Let's see. So an offering of 3 fat mice, and put them down on his doorstep. So at the edge of his door. Then Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels each made a low bow and said politely, ... So a bow. This word is a tricky word. I think it's a interesting word. It's a little tricky. And also, you can look at the word low. Do you see where I'm going? Low bow. So a bow is where you go like this. You lower your head and body to show respect. That's a bow. And a low bow means your head goes down very low to show a lot of respect. Now Look at the spelling of these two words. We have low, L-O-W, and bow, B-O-W. They're spelled the same way, but they sound completely different. Low, bow. So you have to be very careful about the sound of words. Because if you change the sound, it might change the meaning. And the spelling doesn't always tell you how to say it. So English can be tricky that way. Now, the word bow has more than one ways to read it. And so you have to be careful what it sounds like, because that might change what it means. B-O-W here is bow. You lower your body to show respect. You can also say bow, B-O-W, to mean the front of a boat. So the bow of a boat. I think it's the front. Let's see. Bow of a boat. The front of a boat, yeah. I'm not crazy. So always double check. Don't be shy about being wrong. Let's see. So bow, move your body, bow of a ship. But have you ever seen this word somewhere else? B-O-W, you can also read it as bow, B-O. It sounds like B-O. And bow could mean a bow on your suit, or a girl might wear a bow in her hair. A bow can also be bow and arrow, that bow. So bow and bow are two ways to read the same word. Okay? But anyways, let's keep on moving. So they made a low bow and said politely, "Old Mr. Brown, will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island?" Now, this is a very fancy way to ask permission. In regular life, or at least in the United States, no one talks like this. So you don't need to say it like this if you're asking permission. But I'll tell you some other ways to say it. But first, let's look at it. Will you favor us with permission? To favor, or F-A-V-O-R in the United States. So F-A-V-O-U-R is British spelling, or Canadian, I guess. To favor someone is an old-fashioned way to say give. And it's, people don't usually use this anymore. Like, oh, would you favor me with blah, blah, blah? It sounds kind of like you're in Europe 300 years ago. Maybe you're talking to the king. "Oh, king, please favor me with a gift," or something like that. But favor is like, kind of like the word give again. And so they're asking for something. Will you favor us? Will you give us? Okay? It's like give, but give us something nice, if that makes sense. And then permission. Permission is a very important word to know. Permission is a noun for allowing someone to do something. A noun for allowing or letting someone do something, or saying it's okay. So this is a common word for talking to kids or talking about school. So for adults, you don't really need permission to do most things. You can kind of just do a lot of things. But for children, they need to ask for permission. They need to ask their parents or their teacher if they can do something. And so permission's a very common word when talking to kids. So kids will ask for permission, okay? In this story, they say, will you favor us with permission? Now, how would you say that in modern English? So, like I said, favor us is very old school, very old-fashioned. To be fancy, you could say, could we have permission to blah, blah, blah? But that's also still very formal. You could just say, could we blah, blah, blah? Could we, or what are they asking here? Will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island? So they want to go out onto the island and gather nuts for food. So they're asking permission to do that. So you could just keep it simple and say, could we please gather nuts upon your island? Please makes it better, makes it more likely that they will say yes. Another simple way, is it okay if blah, blah, blah? Is it okay if we gather nuts on your island? You could also say, may I blah, 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 or may we blah, blah, blah. May we gather nuts on your island? That's asking permission too. But that's a little too formal. People don't usually say may I or may we anymore. I would stick with could we or could I, or is it okay if you want to keep it simple. Totally fine. Sometimes simple is better. Oops. So these two at the top are a little too formal. The two on the bottom are okay. Remember, in the United States, people don't usually speak very formally. It's not because we're not nice, it's because we want everybody to be equal and be friends, or friendly, if that makes sense. Okay. We're taking it very slow on this story. I hope you're okay with that. Will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island? So what happens? But Nutkin was excessively impertinent in his manners. He bobbed up and down like a little red cherry, singing, riddle me, rot-tot-tote, a little wee man in a red coat, a staff in his hand and a stone in his throat. If you'll tell me this riddle, I'll give you a groat. Now, this riddle is as old as the hills. Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever to Nutkin. He shut his eyes obstinately and went to sleep. Okay. Let's see. But Nutkin, our hero, was excessively impertinent in his manners. Now, these are some tricky words, right? So all the other squirrels are giving an offering to the owl, and they're bowing. So, what does that tell you? Well, they're very polite, and they're being very nice and respectful. So here, Nutkin was excessively impertinent in his manners. So what do you think that could be? Well, all the other squirrels are very polite and respectful. What do you think Nutkin is? Well, it's two separate parts of the story, so it's probably different, right? So you can use clues of what you see in the story to tell you what the words are about. So, also, you might know the word manners. Manners means the way someone acts. Like, are they polite or not? That's what manners are. Do they have good manners or bad manners? And so, the other squirrels are very polite. So what do you think impertinent means? Impertinent. It's a hard word to say. Impertinent. Anyways, well, there's probably contrast, right? These are probably different things. So they're very respectful. So impertinent means rude. And so try to use context to figure things like this out, right? So impertinent means rude. It's a fancy word for rude. And impertinent is not a common word, but you'll see it once in a while. Well, not very often, but if you read stories and read books, you might see it, which is, why we learn vocabulary, right? But Nutkin was excessively impertinent in his manners. Now, he was rude, but how rude? Well, excessively. Excess means too much. And so, what do you think excessively means? Well, excessively is just a fancy way to say very. He was very impertinent. He was very rude. Okay? So let's put the word excess here. So excess is too much, and so excessively is a big word meaning very. Excessively impertinent, a fancy way to say very rude. Okay, let's see. And he says, riddle me, rot tot tote. So a riddle is kind of like a trick question. So he's going to say a riddle to the owl. A little wee man in a red coat. Oh, well, a little means small. Wee also means small. So a little wee man means a small man. Okay? A little wee man in a red coat. So you could just say red coat, but red coat makes it stronger. It's very red, like maybe a bright red. A staff in his hand. A staff is kind of like a big stick, but it's something like a wizard might carry. It's a long, straight staff, and maybe a wizard uses it to shoot magic, or someone could use it to walk. People don't use staves. Yeah, the plural would be staves with a V. But you don't see a staff usually, but it's very common in stories. In regular life, people use walking sticks or canes, but a staff would be like a wizard in a story. Harry Potter uses a magic wand, so that's small. But a staff would be huge, like as tall as me. So think of it that way. So a staff in his hand and a stone in his throat. A stone in his throat means, well, is it really a stone in his throat? Or maybe he's just having trouble speaking. Okay? If you'll tell me this riddle, I'll give you a groat. A groat is a very old-fashioned word, and it's a kind of old coin. I think we might have seen this word in another story we read. But a groat is a coin. And so we don't use this word in normal life, but if we're talking fantasy stories, other worlds, they might use the word groat to talk about their money. Okay. So Squirrel Nutkin reads this little riddle to the owl. And then we get, now this riddle is as old as the hills. Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever to Nutkin. Now, this riddle is as old as the hills. This is cool. This is an idiom. We've learned a lot of idioms together on our course. An idiom is one of those phrases that has special meaning. So, as old as the hills is a common phrase. And what do you think it means? Well, it says old. Hills, how old are hills? Well, very old. Hills are super, super old. Just like a mountain. A mountain might be like 1,000 years, well, millions of years old. Same with hills. Millions or thousands of years old. I'm not sure. So as old as the hills just means very, very old. So this riddle is as old as the hills, meaning it's very, very old. But actually, I don't know the answer to this riddle, to be honest. I forgot to look at what the answer is. But let's say next time we can find the answer to this riddle. What is Squirrel Nutkin talking about? Who is this little wee man in a red coat? Okay, but it's a riddle. A riddle is like a trick question, and you have to figure out what it means. So this riddle is as old as the hills. But I guess Mr. Kyle doesn't know it. Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever to Nutkin. So, you know, pay attention, maybe. Meaning focus on something or listen closely. But pay no attention means you don't listen, you don't care. And Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever. This whatever here is sorry. Keyboard problems. Paid no attention whatever. Here this whatever means at all. So this goes together. Paid no attention at all. Put it like this. So you have to, this word whatever can be used to mean like completely nothing. So paid no attention whatever. Let's see. You can't use it exactly the same as at all. Like, there were no people at all at the party. You can't say no people whatever, but you could say there were no people whatsoever, which is another word. There were no people whatsoever at the party. So if it's talking about things, we could use whatsoever, like, or there was no food at all in the refrigerator. There was no food whatsoever in the fridge. But let's see. Paid no attention whatever. There were no people whatever. Paid no attention whatsoever. I'm thinking too much. Maybe I'm overanalyzing. But I think maybe we use whatsoever more for this. In my version of English. So, Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever to Nutkin. Maybe we can, I'll look up more phrases where we can use this word whatever. But let's say together today that let's use whatsoever. if you want to mean at all. Okay? It's kind of a weird word. Okay, let's keep going. He shut his eyes obstinately and went to sleep. This comes from the adjective obstinate. Okay? Obstinate, obstinately. He was obstinate. Obstinate and obstinately are similar to the word stubborn. Like, he doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't want to listen. He doesn't want to pay attention. Get out of here. So he shut his eyes obstinately. Like, get out of here. And closed his eyes and went to sleep. So Mr. Brown isn't interested in Squirrel Nutkin being silly and telling him riddles and stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one. The squirrels filled their little sacks with nuts and sailed away home. Sorry, let's try again. The squirrels filled their little sacks with nuts and sailed away home in the evening. I gotta break it in the right places. So the squirrels made an offering of mice to the owl. Squirrel Nutkin was being rude and silly, and but then the owl went to sleep because he had his snack of mice, and so the squirrels went and filled their little sacks with nuts. So a sack is a small bag. Nope, I can't type. And then, right away, they just sailed away home in the evening. So they went out, gathered some nuts from the island, and then went back on their rafts and back across the water to their home. Now, why don't they live on the island if there's nuts there? Well, they don't want to live close to an owl. The owl might eat them. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. How much more should we do? Actually, let's read the next two parts, but we can go into detail with them next time. Okay? Because well, yeah. So we can read it together, and then next time we can go back into detail like the other parts. So, but next morning, they all came back again to Owl Island. And Twinkleberry and the others brought a fine, fat mole. A mole is kind of like a squirrel, but with a short tail. Oops, sorry. It's kind of like a mouse, but with a very short tail. Moles like to live in the ground. So, Twinkleberry and the others brought a fine, fat mole and laid it on the stone in front of Old Brown's doorway and said, "Mr. Brown, will you favor us with your gracious permission to gather some more nuts?" Oh, they're even more polite. So before they said, favor us with permission, but now favor us with your gracious permission. Gracious means like, oh, you're so kind, you're so great, you're so gracious. They're extra polite, and they brought a mole as a snack for the owl. Oh, but Nutkin, who had no respect, began to dance up and down, tickling old Mr. Brown with a nettle. A nettle is this kind of plant. And singing, "Old Mr. B, riddle me ree, hitty-pitty within the wall, hitty-pitty without the wall. If you touch hitty-pitty, hitty-pitty will bite you." Mr. Brown woke up suddenly and carried the mole into his house. So, for some reason, Squirrel Nutkin's just being a jerk, just trying to annoy this owl. He's poking him with a stick and tickling him with a nettle. Nettle is like this scratchy, sharp stick. That's not very nice. Probably a bad idea to make an owl angry if you're a squirrel. So, next time we can read these in more detail and see what happens with the owl. Will the owl get annoyed and pissed off? So, let's go back and read the part we did in detail one more time. Okay? So, the squirrels sailed across the water, and they also took with them an offering of 3 fat mice as a present for Old Brown, and put them down upon his doorstep. Then Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels each made a low bow and said politely, "Old Mr. Brown, will you favor us with permission to gather nuts upon your island?" But Nutkin was excessively impertinent. It's a hard word to say. But Nutkin was excessively impertinent in his manners. He bobbed up and down like a little red cherry, singing, riddle me, rote-tote. A little wee man in a red, red coat, a staff in his hand and a stone in his throat. If you tell me this riddle, I'll give you a groat. Now this riddle is as old as the hills. Mr. Brown paid no attention whatever to Nutkin. He shut his eyes obstinately and went to sleep. The squirrels filled their little sacks with nuts and sailed away home in the evening. Okay, so that's it for today. We'll stop here. I was using orange, so we'll do a big orange line. And next time, we can see what happens when Nutkin keeps on annoying this big, scary owl. I hope it doesn't eat all of the squirrels. That would be kind of well, maybe that would be good for Halloween. Have a horrible ending where the owl eats all of the squirrels. Perfect for October, right? Okay. No, I don't think that's going to happen. They'll probably get away with it, right? So let's stop here for today. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you had a good time. I hope you have a nice Sunday evening, and I hope you have a good week this week. Tomorrow's Monday, so I hope it's a smooth and easy start to the week. So thank you everyone. Have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.